Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Day 9 Daily number 481. We learned to be a better gamer and how to pour water onto our face. I just took a drink of water and didn't even touch my lips. I just poured it right over myself. Excellent. We are currently in the midst of watching CreatorPrime's delightful ZVP style. In part number 1, we got the chance to review some of the common themes that we see in the Protoss vs. Zerg matchup, especially from the Protoss point of view, and in particular talked about this time that happens starting around 10 to 12, where the Protoss really begins to ramp up Colossus production, trying to get a big number of Colossus for a scary push at 15 or 16 minutes. And Zergs tend to be aggressive during this period, and in particular light on the defense. What we see from CreatorPrime, though, in part 1, is this setup that begins by going for Blink Stalkers and a fast +3, and then just adds on more gateways and more gateways. And right now, at this point in time, we have 10 gateways up. We saw some of the specifics of the build, and very interestingly, this Dark Shrine that allows us to both deal with attacks like this, and put on these sort of damaging counterattacks with Dark Templar. Most Zerg players will either be massing up huge numbers of mid-game units, trying to put pressure on us, which we will deflect very easily with our non-stop Immortal Stalker production out of our 10 gateways. Or they will be in a defensive footing, and if they are on a defensive footing, then we simply begin attacking with our Mega Force. Either way, we have a 4th base as Protoss. Quite early, we're at the money number of probes, 72. And it's time to just start massing stuff up. Again, we're getting into a little bit of these engagements, but we're not really concerned about attacking our opponent until around 1630. Why is that? Because that's around when we expect the earliest Infestor timing, or excuse me, the earliest Broodlord timing to be at. So per usual, Immortals are really good at killing stuff off. And thanks to our 10 gateways, we can immediately warp in absolutely terrifying numbers of units. So you'll notice that this attack, when is this attack happening? This attack is happening around 1630. It's hitting Nerchio around 1630. I will re-emphasize this by coming back to 13 minutes. And I'll note, we're at 147 food. We could be attacking. Sure, we have to do a defense here. I'm going to X8 this. And, okay, well, we killed off that attack. Why don't we attack now? Why not? Because it's not close to 1630 yet. We're defending here. We kill off a fairly big push. Why not attack now? Why not attack now? Well, it's not 1630. We're hanging out. We even have our expansion up and running. There's another attack that's going to fail. And why are we attacking now? Well, because it's a little after 16 minutes. And why is that significant? Because this is about as early as he's ever going to have a hive done and be considering starting the Greater Spire. This is the weak juncture in the Protoss vs. Zerg matchup for them Zergies. Zergs will be very, very alarmed if you begin consistently hitting at this point in time. However, what's nice about this composition over the traditional Colossus-focused mixture is that you have the ability to be more aggressive. We can do a split like this and a split like this. This actually is quite good. If we had 2 Colossi over here and 2 over here, it would actually be quite weak. We need to keep our Colossi together, so we have the ability to split stuff up, and that's nice for us. And also the nice part about this is that if our Zerg opponent was not aggressive, then we could really kick into high action. We could begin being very, very aggressive right off the bat. So we're going to be doing our standard Blink Micro. Back home, nothing's changing. We are starting to incorporate more DTs, though, into this mixture, because with these attacks, we can split the DTs off and hit these disparate expansions. And what's also quite nice is that we can incorporate the Dark Templar into our primary mix. A little known fact, Immortals do 65 damage to Armored when they have +3 attack. 65 damage. I want that number to sink into you because 65 times 2 is 130. You can almost 2-shot a roach with that. A lot of people are aware of how strong Immortals are. However, I want you to also note that a Dark Templar does 60 damage to everything. 60 damage. That's a lot of damage. It's a lot of damage, 60 damage. I think the Dark Templar, most people build it because they're like, oh, this kid doesn't have detection. Oh, he's going to be so mad. there's that aspect to it, but more importantly, they just do 60 damage. They have a very high DPS, as you World of Warcraft people would say. Not that I have anything against World of Warcraft, the game's actually totally awesome, but still, if I can have a chance to be nasty and derogatory, you know I always take that chance. So interestingly, we see Creator beginning to incorporate more Dark Templar into this unit mix. Why does it make sense? Because the composition that would be good against the Dark Templar, namely Overseers and Fungal Growths, those fungal growths you're going to want to be spending here. The Overseers you can shoot down quite easily with the Stalkers. This is really, really cool, just incorporating them in. Because the Dark Templar can walk forward, they can do target firing of the Infestos. There's the big hit on those. But they actually, that's a second fungal that just went down. They don't die quite as quickly as you'd think. And at no point in time have we seen Nerchio really able to take advantage of this Greater Spire, because literally we as CreatorPrime stepped into aggressive action the very instant that we got to 16 minutes. Nito Bandito Burrito. He never got this expansion up and running. Look at this 1,500 minerals over here. Look at these 1,500 minerals over here. He was essentially pinned down to 3 base. Now, note Nerchio is really good at Zerg vs. Protoss. He recently won Home Story Cup by being a huge badass. So, of course, want to emphasize that. Just to note that a lot of people be like, well, it's Nerchio. He's not Korean. He's not Korean. How do you beat him if he's not Korean? So we're going to go on to a second game between Creator and Nerchio. Yeah, Nerchio is quite good. Quite good, quite good. So we're going to go ahead and do this second game, and then in part number 3 we'll watch a third game where we're just going to show a little bit of a variation on this, just so that way you have some switch-ups. Someone asked how much a +3 ground weapons Archon would do. I want to say 43? No, it has to be higher than that. Isn't that right? Anyone know how much the Archon does when it's fully upgraded? I don't actually know that fact. Does this thing know? Protoss units, Archon? 35? I'm pretty sure it's 43. Isn't that... 47? 47. 47 sounds more reasonable. Where am I getting 43 from? Oh, I guess it's +4 for everyone. Yeah, 43 is a +2 Archon. That's where it is. Thank you, guys. Thank you, gents. It does... to answer your question, it was 47 damage. Great, good. Jiff it. Jiff it. Jiff it good. So I want you to notice right off the bat, in this game, this map is Atlantis Spaceship, and I'm going to pull down here to note this. If you look at the mini-map, the most notable feature of Atlantis Spaceship is that it looks like a teddy bear. There's an eye, and there's an eye, and there's a nose, and here's his little ear, and here's his little ear, and then he has paws out here, and paws. Right? It's just a big bear-shaped map. But also important to note, other than the bear aspect, is the fact that CreatorPrime didn't go for 17 Nexus. He's going for a Forge first, and he's commencing with a Scout. I emphasize this because it's very easy to watch CreatorPrime's build on Ohana and think, oh my gosh, I need to mimic it exactly, I need the 17 Nexus, but what if I'm getting rushed? Blah. Don't worry about that. The interesting stuff happens around after 7:30. That's when the interesting stuff happens. Before then, you just do what you can. Anyone else hear that squeaking? That's driving me nuts. Driving me nuts! CreatorPrime subsequently gets himself a nice tight wall off. Gets the double gas, as many Protosses do. Chronoboosts his little heart out. And CreatorPrime on this map also scouted to see a pool with no gas and expand, and he can generally conclude that there's an expand here. That'll be true about 70 to 80% of the time. A lot of Protosses just don't scout there. I would argue that it's a clear mistake, because enough percentage of the time people just throw down the insta snap rush. But still, let's notice some commonalities. Warp Gate, Sentry, +1. In that order. Warp Gate, Sentry, +1. Right after we get the +1, we get our double gas up. Oh, yeah. Still making sentries. Even though we didn't scout for a lot of roach baneling attacks, we're still fairly comfortable just due to the fact that we're getting so many sentries. Chrono boosts, you'll see, there's a chrono there on the Nexus, and a chrono here on the Nexus. Minis, chronos, boosts. Now here's a little bit of the weird part. Generally, you'll see 4 gateways here. Creator tends to do 3. In part number 3, we'll see that if he reads weakness in his opponent, he'll just build 4 more gateways and go all in. If he doesn't read weakness in his opponent, he's just going to use these 3 gateways to expand. So remember last game how we saw 4 gates, and then a Twilight Council, and this game we're seeing 3 gates and then a Twilight Council? This is largely because we went Forge first in this game and Nexus first in the other. And that's about it. So we're moving out right now because at worst we're up against slow lings and slow roaches. God, what I'm saying is so boring. But yeah, we go ahead and we get our usual thing. We get our blink up. And cool. If we're feeling a little concerned, or if we're feeling not concerned at all, we can just instantly take this expansion. If we're feeling concerned, we just get more gateways. Making sentries. Now, most people would consider that swell of gateways to be quite aggressive. But what I'll note is that due to the fact that we're building only sentries, and due to the fact that these are such late gateways, we actually can still expand with quite a comfortable amount of money. What's the one thing you're noticing that's different? No robo. No robo at all. So we can robo and expand and stick on 4, or we can no robo and make a couple extra gateways, and then we can expand as well. This is another interesting option that we can do. We can go ahead and go for the hallucination to do a little scouting. But primarily we're getting sentries because they're low on minerals. And what do we do with the excess minerals? We spend that on the Nexus and we spend that on gateways. And then we just burn all our gas making sentries. And also because Force Field with Stalker is just very, very, very strong.
I am here in the shadows. I am here in the shadows.
So we get some scouting, we see that there's a 3rd there, we poke in here. Really should go into the main, considering that's where all the structures are. But what's very nice about... Okay, so here's what's annoying if you go for this expand, relying heavily on Immortals. If you do that, you're kind of committed to defense. But if you go for Blink Stalkers, you have total flexibility to be aggressive, to pull back, to just do a whole bunch of whatever you want to do, right? In the last game, we saw CreatorPrime kind of go for the Immortals a little bit early. He was forced to be defensive. But here we see CreatorPrime actually splitting his units up and moving out. Poking quite far forward to be in sync with +2. And there we see a little bit of a flood here. Losing all these sentries, this is actually pretty bad. I'll note one important aspect. Roaches have a 2.25 move speed. Sentries have a 2.25 move speed. So you're actually generally okay up to around 11 minutes with the ability to retreat. I don't know what happened to CreatorPrime or if he got distracted, but I mean, even these Stalkers could get out of there. However, even with that kind of enormous loss of sentries, we see Creator able to put on this nice little bit of pressure. Man, his mind is elsewhere. He is just not paying attention in these battles. We can still put pressure on with these Blink Stalkers. Being in a lot of places at once, we still have our expansion up. And then we're just going to back up and get this Robo. Again, the traditional play here is you get the Robo and then you start Colossus production. Rather, what we're going to see CreatorPrime do is get this Robo facility and get a whole bunch more gateways. Because of that massive sentry loss and the fact that he saw Burrow and yet has no detection, now Creator is going to have to play a little bit defensively, but still similar structural elements, getting the +3 very, very quickly. And right now, right around here when this guy finishes, bam! Right as these roaches unburrow. This is something that I will call a convergence point. If you watch... Like, let's say one day you're like, damn it, my Terran vs. Zerg sucks. I need to watch better Terran players play so I can learn what they do in this matchup. You watch 20 Terran vs. Zerg games. The convergence points are the times when pretty much everybody has the same stuff. And when I say stuff, what I mean specifically are buildings. Not so much the units, but the buildings. Everyone gets the same building composition. You might see the Terran player open up Hellion Banshee. You might see him straight tech to Marine Tank. You might see him go Marine Hellion Medevac push. You might see him go Marine Marauder in the opening. But generally there comes a point where a Terran player will have 3 bases, 2 factories, and 6 to 9 barracks. This is just generally, you'll always see these exact numbers. So what I want to note here is this is another convergence point. This is a convergence point where we have 6 gateways and a robo. It's the exact same thing that we had last game. We have a +3 forge and a Twilight Council with Blink being done at it. It's a convergence point. And it's so important to know what the convergence points in your play are based on numbers, so that way no matter how screwed you are or how good or badly your opening went, you know exactly where you're going to. Oh, I did this huge attack with a bunch of sentries and blink stalkers, but he has burrow roaches and all this stuff. Well, I'm just going to go back to my convergence point, which gets me a robo and lets me keep building blink stalkers. Cool. We have some obnoxiousness going on. No big deal. No freaking big deal. Now, what did we see last game? Again, we lose our forge. That's annoying. Last game, we saw a Dark Shrine go down, and then we saw 4 more gateways total. We saw a grand total of 10 gateways. It's going to take a little time for CreatorPrime to get back to that point, but still, these extra 3 gateways going up to 10 is just a little ways in the distance. It's still a point we would like to get to. We still are emphasizing heavily blink stalkers. Hey, there we go. There's 2 more gateways being built. Boink, doink. And probably a 10th one. There we go. 10 gateways. Cool. Still, we still find ourselves getting these Dark Templar. Putting them into our unit mix. Man, we're getting a lot of DTs. Where are those DTs being warped in? Ha! Found them. Alright, so let's go ahead and remember some key times. About 1630 is around the time when he's going to be hiving. Alright, cool. So we see the hive go down. A kind of a simple formula that you can use is that if you see a hive already building, you can just basically say 3 minutes from now. You essentially just pull a minute off the timing. It's a really easy by-the-book rule. If the hive's building, you have 3 minutes. If the hive's done, you have 2 minutes. If you don't see a hive, you have 4 minutes. Hey, we now know timings. We're rounding, but it's pretty much that, right? It's pretty easy. And per usual, we're doing our little thingaruha where we say, oh, what are you doing? You're doing your annoying aggressive stuff? Well, that's fine. I'll do these 3 Templar harassment plays. We already have our money 72 probes. We're getting another quite early 4th Nexus. Those Dark Templar die. This one doesn't. Still distracts him long enough. I'll note that these units are going to be pushing up this way to this base. Actually, this is one of the most interesting unit movements in the entire game. Okay, we're going to be expanding here, so where do we attack? Well, we want to attack up this right lane, because if we have our units parked here, notice that it defends this expansion in the bottom right by virtue of just being in the way. So as CreatorPrime moves up, he's going to do this. The basic movement is he wants to attack here, but there's another common move called a cut or a cut-in, where he's literally going to cut forward. And what this will do is it'll shove everything back. It shoves everything back, and then once he gets kind of far, then he pulls back this way. What does this effectively do? It defends this expansion, and it clears out this area for a counterattack. You see a lot of players, they're basically going from A to B, but they do a nice cut in. And you see that? You see how there were a whole bunch of units here? If he didn't do that cut in, the units could have been down here by now, but because he did that, he's in fine shape. So he's going to make another cut in. A lot farther this time, because he sees units and needs to come back to defend a little bit. And essentially is abandoning his whole attack. But still important to note that this corner was the target. And then kept cutting this way, and then he sees units and engages. Yet again, Immortal Stalker with these Dark Templar at the front lines is ridiculous. It's so good. And no Colossi. Now there was a Warp Prism thing, so I'm gonna wander back because I wasn't paying attention to that at all. All right, cool. Where is our Warp Prism? There it is. All right, here's the cut in that I was talking about all of the time. So here's the Warp Prism coming up. We kind of have the intention of drilling this area while doing a little drop here, or maybe we'll even drop here and kill off this expansion while he's like fully distracted. Where is that freaking Warp Prism? There it is. Another big advantage about going for this 10 gateway style, we get 10 gateways up quite quickly. So we can clearly put pressure on the front. We clearly have the mobility to take another expansion. And when we go for Warp Prism play, we have plenty of warping that we can do in his main base. So suddenly this happens, we start losing some food, and we can warp in a full 10 units, a mixture of Zealots and DTs. Zealots because they're cheap and are pretty good damage dealers, and the Dark Templar because they are ridiculous damage dealers. And then just continuing aggression. Seriously, Creator just defended an attack and is immediately hopping into the offensive at whatever is weakest. If he's distracted by a drop here, his weakest point is here. Just kills that. And now can throw in a whole bunch of Archons with all those DTs. And goes in for the kill. Note that we have never gotten a chance to see Broodlords. We've never gotten a chance to see Ultralisks. And even if he did get to Ultra Broodlord, Immortal Stalker Archon, with some Zealots also being warped in, will destroy it. Easy peasy. What we're going to do is we're going to take a break, and when we come back in part number 3, it'll be a pretty short part number 3, but we'll look at a variation on this build order where we will see that we don't necessarily have to follow up with this sort of third base, then fourth base, and long-term 20-minute game. We actually have some options to just be dastardly and aggro. So let us hop to it. Let us hop to it! Oh!